8 people on it, all like doing their own voice and personality.
Yeah, they were just like dancing every time the police showed up, and like it was just ridiculous.
When the police showed up to murder everyone, and everyone does a dance.
Okay,
dark.
that's fucking sweet. I had to authorize the chat thing.
Oh, that is nice.
And now I can just type it all in here.
Sweet.
Instead of having what I was doing before, just read it over here, type it over here, and then go back to
Yeah.
now I can
Right.
just do it all from
Nice.
That's nice, and I like that you can see the window down here, and it's not blocking anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the old chat thing that we had, which I could set
Oh, the
clear,
transparent one?
the
Yeah.
transparent one. But because we don't use that for streaming anymore,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't function anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fine.
It's kind of irritating like that, but I don't know. They'll figure it out eventually. Figure it out.
Gotta figure it out.
So I kept the boss room mostly conversational. Usually I try to put in a lot of like leading questions and things that kind of get the ball rolling on this. I think this is one of those instances where I feel like we're going to really benefit from just having the pretend it's just us in the room talking as friends dialogue and me not trying to guide the conversation on it.
Agreed.
Because I feel like we need to just have an honest discussion about it and not be...
Yeah, it's better that, we don't come off as just trying to shit on a thing. I mean, if
Right,
we
right.
can,
I've got enough information for the educational part, and I'll introduce with that.
There we go.
I'll start with the informational part of it. But I think other than that, I think we should just hang out as friends and have a conversation about it because it's really shitty and
yeah,
you know.
agreed.
Did you watch the show GT Grand Tour?
No, I'm not gonna do that. Probably, I don't care about.
Oh no,
cars.
that thing is I like cars and I like
Yeah.
the show, but no, they have a thing in that show where they said it's a Conversation Street. Where they
Yeah,
run around and
I
they talk
like
about
that.
car stuff. And the fun thing is they always did a weird ass opening bumper for it where it was all three of them in silhouette, but was something fucking psychotic was happening. Like one dude's arms was like 7 feet long, and everyone's just like sitting there like just miming whatever they're doing, and him just like
Right.
going, oh, it's ridiculous shit. Every one of them was
That's
fucking
awesome.
brilliant. That sucks. That shit, it's gonna be gone now.
Yeah,
Well, they're still gonna keep doing like the worldwide tour stuff, but they're not doing the localized thing where they have people come into
Oh, yeah.
the house and all of that.
Is The Expanse getting another season this year?
it's definitely supposed to be coming out this year, probably
Okay.
later in the year.
Okay.
But that's when Amazon is gonna drop the whole season at once. 'cause
Hey, that
they're
works for
Amazon.
me. Yeah, I just
Okay, yeah, it works.
cool. All right, chat.
That's
Chat
the
is
thing.
functional. Awesome.
Love that.
Nobody's in it.
Yeah, we managed to get not only online pretty much on time today.
I know. I literally,
but-
I actually turned it on at 7:29.
and actually managed to have everything functioning as intended. I don't understand. This is going to be a really bad episode of the podcast, guys, because nothing's gone wrong in the first 5 minutes.
Nothing's fucked up, and we're 10
Yeah,
minutes late.
there's a dinosaur's gonna come through the window at some point now, just because everything worked correctly.
But yeah, I figured with it being a conversation about loot boxes, microtransactions, and EA's general shittiness, I figure that's something that we can just talk candidly about and not
can,
have to.
for sure.
We've done enough episodes where I've created a fact sheet for us and be like, we need to hit these 5 talking points. Now at this point, we can just hang out and talk about it as friends because this is just a hot fucking mess they pulled off. So.
I was kind of wondering, like, at any point should we try to play devil's advocate? Like,
Well, if
like,
I find an
argument
opportunity
me
to, I
loves
will.
to argue. Like, I can't justify.
I don't
this
think
shit.
you're going to be able to justify it with what
Like,
we're gonna be
I
talking about
can't, like-
today. No, not
Like,
with the
I've been
bullshit EA
thinking
did.
about it throughout the week, and I'm like, okay, is there any way I can try to take their side on this? And I'm like, my brain just won't let me do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Like, I
just-
can't
you
fucking
just
do it.
can't. All right, well, let's go ahead and just get things started then. And you may ask yourself, what did EA do wrong this week? Adventurers, it's time to find out on an all-new episode.
What didn't they do?
Which thing didn't they do?
Like, I kind of feel like we need to give them a list. Like, did EA A do this, B, or C? Stick around to find out. The secret is all of them.
That usually would be the secret.
Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the show. We are the Surly Nerd, your one-stop shop for geek news that might have flown under your radar over the last week. I'm your host, James, and sitting across from me is the producer of this fine show, Tony.
Hey.
And with us, as always, our third chair host, Hector.
Howdy.
And if you're new to our show, hey, welcome. This week's Boss Room is going to be about loot boxes, microtransactions, and just EA in general. But before that, we have the Weekly Raid, which is a recap of all the nerd news that's fit to rant about for your ears. Don't forget that you can keep connected with us through thesurlynerd.com. You can follow us on all social media platforms and even donate to the show. Every penny donated goes right back to the show that we make for you every week. With all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, adventurers of all ages, it's time for The Prelude.
Prelude.
All right, this is The Prelude. This is what we've been doing with ourselves this week, what we've been playing, what we've been watching, and what's been occupying our free time. Tony, what do you got?
I started rewatching Stargate Universe.
Yeah.
Liked it when it came out, and it's been a while. As I said on a few episodes ago on the show, I was rewatching Stargate because
I think
there's like 12 seasons of it, and I love that show.
Easy to do.
I know a lot of nerds, like a lot. Not all of them, but a majority.
It'd be hard to know all of them.
A majority. And I feel like you are the biggest Stargate nerd that I've ever
Not,
met.
I don't really know anybody else that really likes Stargate.
Yeah.
honestly,
It's weird. Like you're
Yeah.
so into it.
We'll have to get you talking to Ross about it because he's a pretty big Stargate nerd.
Okay, so we know one other person that likes
No
Stargate.
one.
I like Stargate.
Another friend of mine from high school, Nigel, was a huge
I
Stargate nerd
I
at the
loved
time.
the movie, tried to watch the TV show, and it didn't jive with me. That
Yeah.
was back when it
I
first
mean,
came out.
that's,
yeah, no,
and that
the
is completely
movie,
acceptable
I mean,
because the
I was
movie and the
also
show
obsessed
were
with the
very different.
Yeah.
And the show tried to pick up. It was tried to do that same thing that Buffy the Vampire Slayer did in its first season, which was try to be a continuation of the movie, and then quickly realized we are not that. We
Yeah.
have to become our own thing.
We really need our own universe.
Yeah, and then by the time they got to Universe was the third spinoff off of the show, and it only lasted 2 seasons. But it was in like a post Battlestar Galactica sci-fi world,
Right,
So it's
right.
very gritty. It's very much we're all gonna die all the time, which kind of makes sense because you're like 80 people in a spaceship, two like 20 different galaxies away from where we are right now. And you've got like a limited number of supplies. What the fuck are you gonna do?
Yeah, I do find myself as I'm watching and listening to the audiobooks for The Expanse going, man, I really did miss that time that I binge watched all of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
That was fun. That
It was
good
so
times.
good.
I
And
tried,
I'm probably gonna go back and watch that again.
It didn't
soon.
work out for me. Maybe I'm way too much of a Trekkie. I literally grew up binge watching Star Trek from like my first grade year.
Yeah, and see, I'm
as
not
a child.
I'm not as into Star Trek, so.
So when I got to Battlestar Galactica and everyone told me, hey, check this out, I got through like the first season and I was like, this isn't highbrow enough for me.
Which is surprising.
Monocle
'cause
adjustments.
It's pretty highbrow.
Top hat dip.
They
pretty highbrow.
are definitely different types of science fiction.
Oh, for sure. And I
And-
like my trashy sci-fi too.
Yeah.
For some reason, this fell in like a really weird place for me where
It was maybe it was too militaristic because
I
that was
think maybe
that was a
that.
huge
Well, I
part
mean,
of Battlestar
without
Galactica.
being a joke, right?
Yeah.
And like if it's different from something like a Starship Troopers, where that's always played tongue like way.
It's more
way
it's
in
satiristic,
Yeah.
and Battlestar Galactica is this is more on the Greek and Roman
Yeah.
type of history, to where it's like you're legit going to be if you're part of these planets, you're going to be part of the military at that point.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, it's
So yeah, you're rewatching Stargate.
yeah,
Anything
rewatching
else?
Stargate Universe. I went to a concert. That was fun. We went to 6th Street here in Austin for Overwatch. That
Yep.
was
Yeah, we did
That's
that.
a thing that
Overwatch
happened.
happened on 6th Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a new esports lounge that's going to be opening up on 6th Street,
Nice.
and they're talking about wanting to host the Outlaws watch parties there, so that was pretty cool. Hector, what'd you do this week?
Let's see. I played a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. I did what I want to do with games that I really like, and I started it over, even though I was a good, 20-something hours in. Well, the last time I stopped playing, I was like, you know what? I'll be better this time.
Yeah.
Cranked up the difficulty, started it from the beginning, really taking my time with it. I'm farther now than I was before. I'm kind of just now actually discovering what happened
Right.
to everything.
Right.
And I feel like I'm like nestling into kind of a halfway point in the game. Feels really
to
good.
kind of jump into your conversation here. I started Horizon Zero Dawn for the first time this week.
And what did you think of your introductory hours?
Right, so I got the complete collection for like $10, and I mean, first and foremost, I lost like 4 hours playing it, and I have no idea where those 4 hours went. I was it just immersed me and it sucked me in, and that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
What I do find really fascinating about it, to kind of piggyback on your point that you just brought up, is Horizon Zero Dawn does something really interesting, and you want to talk about like highbrow. If you read between the lines of the way that people talk in that game, and the old school like vernacular that they use for everything, you can find most of the plot in the game in the first 15 minutes. At least as far as what happened to the world.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to, like, there was a scene I remember where you go to the first town, and there's a person telling the story of what happened. And you have to kind of deconstruct what they're saying, because they're telling it in like old school, like old timey storyteller way. You know, it's set up to be very much like a tribe of Vikings telling a story, passing it down to generations. But between the lines of the gods fighting the humans and all this stuff, there is the truth of the mythology, which you can begin to parse out as you're like, okay, so machines rose up. This is what happened. Oh, and you're piecing it all together in your head as you play, basically.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about this game, is it takes its plot, like a big open world game, it's so easy to lose the plot, but they kind of made the entire world you're in the plot.
Yeah.
So as you go around and do everything, you're constantly learning little things here and there about this mystery box that they have you like seeking the whole game, even though that's not really what you're doing. Really, is you're just being a person in this world. It's very well executed.
Yeah, it's a beautiful game, and I
enjoyed it a little bit. I would watch you play it for a little bit, just and then I would come back out and be like, okay, so what's the plot going on now? What's happening in the world? Okay, cool. I'll see you back in an hour.
Yeah. And did you God, I had a question. Did you cry during the training montage, the opening scene?
That was pretty good. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people do that. I thought it was pretty good.
It was a solid scene. Anyways, I highly recommend Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm not even like 10 hours into it.
Yeah.
And I'm already just obsessed with it.
It's pretty, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really pretty good.
Anything else you did this week?
I got like halfway through Nosferatu.
Yeah. Haven't started
the book?
yet, but
no.
The show? Okay.
Yeah.
I've only watched the first episode.
Oh, okay. It only gets better. It gets so much better. Yeah, I'm about halfway through that. And I started Bloodstained, the Kickstarter Igavania. That came out. Kickstarter came out like 4 years ago.
I really wanted to back that, but I've been so burned by Kickstarter video games.
I didn't back it either. Yeah. And I thought I had backed it. And then when it came out and I realized I didn't have a Kickstarter email, I was like, well, I'm going to go buy this now.
Right.
And it is wonderful. It is everything I want from a modern take on Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
In every way possible.
Yeah, I remember when that Kickstarter came out, and I remember both of us were like, cool, this looks really awesome. It's probably never coming out.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be finished.
Even in Brooklyn in chat says it's basically Symphony of the Night too.
Yeah, and that's what we wanted.
Yeah.
But I was just, at that point, we'd already been invested in 3 different games in Kickstarter, and
I had done
none of them were good.
I had done Mech Warrior, I did Star Citizen, I had done and I was just like, this is getting ridiculous. But I'm glad to see that there's a second coming of Symphony of the Night, or the Castlevania series, especially because when you think of things like Mighty Number 9, which were kickstarted, that was a creator basically making a new Mega Man game, and it came out and everybody was like, this is Mega Man but bad.
It was super bad.
Right, and that was the concern going forward. We kind of extrapolated from that. We were like, okay, well, if the creator of Mega Man makes a bad Mega Man game, what's going to happen when the dude who runs Castlevania goes to make a new one?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? There have been some really, really good games that came out of Kickstarter, but those are easy to forget. The failures always kind of feel like they're right in our face, and I can name easily 5 failures on Kickstarter right now, but I'm having a hard time remembering more than 3 successes, and there have been quite a few.
Right. Yeah, over on my end, again, I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn. That took up a majority of my time. I watched A Star Is Born. That was really that was a lot sadder than I thought it was going to be.
I enjoyed that movie.
That was
Bradley Cooper as a director. I mean, it was a good thing that he went with a movie that has already been made twice before. So all you do is really improve upon what they'd already done.
I love the idea of having a blueprint and just being able to hit the beats and then do whatever you want.
I mean, that's really hard to go up against, because you had Chris Christopherson and Barbara Streisand in the most recent remake, the one everybody knows of, and that's a pretty. That's a good cast.
Yeah.
That movie was a classic already.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna do it with Lady Gaga, and I was like, cool.
Yeah.
we'll see. And then I watched it and it was like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, I already liked her before.
See,
I love her as an actress
I didn't know
now.
she could act because I never watched American Horror Story, and I know that
yeah.
she was good in that. But when they're like, "Hey, she's gonna be, leading lady opposite, fucking Bradley Cooper," I'm like, "Can she carry that?" And then
Like,
I
she
saw
has to
the
play
movie.
Barbara Streisand's role. Can Lady Gaga do that?
And then I saw the movie. I was like, "Fuck, she did that."
All right, that's everything that we did this week, and that's everything we have for the Prelude. We're going to take a small break, and when we come back, we'll be going into our news segment, The Weekly Raid. Hey, everybody. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, bad Kickstarters just really do hurt good Kickstarters.
And they stick around and keep hurting.
Yeah, no, like, and you
Kickstarters.
think right now about video game Kickstarters, you immediately go to like Star Citizen, you go, I never want to back a video game on Kickstarter ever,
Yeah.
because of that game has gotten so big and so much bad press that everybody immediately goes, no, you just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I think the first game I ever backed was probably Hyper Light Drifter, and then I started backing more games, thinking like, I mean, if these games start coming out in a couple of years, this is such a great way to give money, directly.
So I didn't know that was
to
a Kickstarter.
developers.
I got it on Steam.
It was a wonderful game.
Yeah, no, I got it. It was fun.
But there were like 5 games that I backed, and like only 3 of those 5 are out to this day, and that was when Hyper Light Drifter first launched.
Yeah.
There's one that still looks good that I'm still looking forward to, but it's like one guy doing this big Metroidvania all by himself.
That's gonna take a while.
I mean, there's so much bad for like the little bit of good you get.
It's true.
At this point, Kickstarter is just supporting my friends who are artists and make things and put them
Yeah.
on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like that's it at this point. Like I can't go out of my way to look at Kickstarter anymore.
No.
That was a good chunk of my life. That was when we first met.
Yeah.
I was spending a lot of time on Kickstarter just looking at weird shit every day.
Yep.
And now I'm just like, no. Cool. I'll pre-order my friend's stuff plushie thing.
My favorite
And
is
that's
still the
about
guy
it.
who made like $109,000 to make potato salad.
Yeah, I don't see how they allowed that, but that happened.
You can like there was no ceiling at the time, so he
Yeah.
asked for like $20 to make like really good potato salad, and
Yeah.
people just kept donating because
And there was no like,
for
I'm
the
going to give
lulz.
you anything. It was just straight up give this guy money.
Yeah,
And he was going to make it for himself.
yeah. He would video him doing it.
All right, so
Oh, yeah, I forgot I need to go to the editor and change that because I haven't turned these into buttons yet.
hi, Bubs.
Hey, cutie.
You can be part of the show. It's okay.
Oh, yeah. The people love you.
Yes.
All right, we can all read that? Like, I increased the font.
No, I can read
Yeah,
that
it's
from
good.
you.
Ah, there's a fucking cat behind me.
Yep.
I was wondering why y'all were talking to him.
Yep.
You done
Come on
there?
down.
He's just figuring out
At least
what
he's...
he wants
I'm
to
just going to
You're-
get my
you're
beer
good.
away
do.
from
Yeah,
his
he may want to
butthole.
sit in your lap. We don't know.
It's fine. You can do it.
He does that with me every now and then. He's like, it's lap time. I'm like, cool, I was already...
Nope.
It's
Yep.
lap time
It's
now.
Uncle Tony.
Fucking lap
You wanted
time.
you're technically you have a way more comfortable lap right now. You
Yeah,
got,
I
you
got
got
my
the
legs
comfy
crossed.
pants on.
Yeah.
You got the legs crossed. Yeah.
All right, I now have
That's
a
He
cat.
ended up throwing a baller potato salad party. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I had forgotten that part. He threw like a big like potato salad party.
That's insane. I love it. All right, let's do it.
All right. I have a cat now.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. This is fine. The Weekly Raid.
Hey, adventurers, welcome back to the show. Okay, it's the Weekly Raid. It's our news roundup for the week. I want to kick things off on a high note and start talking a little bit about Cyberpunk.
yes.
So, Hector, I'm glad you're on the panel this week because I need your input because we're going to be diving into a topic that I'm not that familiar with, and that's going to be DLC
Okay.
in terms of CD Projekt Red.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we found out this week from CD Projekt Red that the way that they're going to be handling their content after the initial game's release is that they're going to be using a formula that they call the Witcher 3 style expansion.
Right.
Can you define what that is for the audience and tell me whether or not that's a good thing?
So, if you remember way back in the day when a game expansion really meant something, I'm talking like Diablo 2,
Brood Wars?
Yeah, that thing.
Shit, even Diablo 3, whenever they made
Yeah,
the...
exactly.
Eternal Collection. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the old Blizzard one, the Half-Life episodes, like a real expansion, a whole nother piece of a game.
Right.
I talked several months ago about I had just completed the Heart of Darkness for The Witcher 3, which ended up being on its own this like whole like 10-hour plot line that gave you a whole nother chunk of the world to explore and ended up being a really cool story based on Faust and the Devil. The second DLC they released was a much, much larger piece of content, ended up being around 30 hours.
Wow.
And the year it came out, which was 2015, the year The Witcher 3 came out, it was voted, RPG of the Year, did by like everybody.
Game of the Year,
Game of the Year by a bunch of things, graphics and everything else. But one of the accolades was like RPG of the Year. In the 2016, when Blood and Wine came out, even though it was DLC, it got voted RPG of the Year.
Wow.
That's how good that addition to The Witcher 3 was. So, yes, if they plan to expand the game by putting massive chunks into it and like whole sections of the game we've never seen before, 100% on
Like whole new
board.
cities and shit like that.
Well, we learned last week that the entire game will not take place in the single city. And we've seen bits of trailers before with people in space, or at least in orbit. So we don't know what they could add to this, but they could add a lot.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious because, again, I hadn't played The Witcher 3. I was familiar, obviously, with its success, but I didn't know if this was going to be one of those things that people were going to be worried that because they're announcing their DLC so early, they're saying, well, isn't this shit supposed to be in the main game and you're just saving it for later?
I mean...
But it doesn't sound like CD Projekt Red goes that way.
Right, no. The two pieces of DLC they have for The Witcher 3, you could, I guess, technically say, well, shouldn't this have just been in the original game? But it really didn't feel that way.
They're separate stories.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, they specifically designed both of those stories to take place after you finish the main game.
Yeah, kind of like you played the Spider-Man game, and the Spider-Man DLC was still the same game, but it was a completely different story. It was a separate thing, and it was meant to be a DLC.
Yeah, it was definitely you couldn't have put that DLC into the game at all, especially because it takes place after.
And that's the way The Witcher DLCs have always been.
Definitely.
You couldn't have put that story in with this other story. It wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
And instead of making a whole separate game and calling it Witcher 3.5 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
They just make it a DLC. I'm pro this. And plus, it's Cyberpunk. I'm ridiculously excited for it.
Yeah, they basically said, they went on record and said, we're not withholding story for the future to try and monetize it or sell it in pieces. You're going to get the whole full game when you get when you plop down your $60 for it. But what we have for the future is going to be its own separate stories and things like that.
Which I feel like they might have had to say before The Witcher 3, but now, I mean, the CD Projekt Red, I probably said this before, is the only company at this point that I'll pre-order games for. Them and Naughty Dog. But I don't even have to pre-order Naughty Dog games. That's besides the point. Yeah, the CD Projekt Red, as far as I'm concerned, until they put out something bad, can do no wrong.
Right. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. They, of course, kind of backed up their earlier claims saying there's not going to be any kind of exclusive content to any consoles or any of that shit that happened.
Right.
That did actually happen with The Witcher back in the day. It was like, none of that. We're just releasing the fucking game. That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's some other
Everybody gets the same game. Shut the fuck up about it.
Exactly.
But in other Cyberpunk news this week, we found out that there's going to be a prequel to Cyberpunk 2077, but it's in the form of a tabletop game. Now, obviously, Cyberpunk 2077 comes from a tabletop RPG.
Yes.
So what they've done is there's a new project that's going to be launching called Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart Kit. And it's going to go on sale August 1st at Gen Con, which is like the biggest
that's the biggest tabletop gaming thing in the world.
Or whatever tabletop RPGs, you go to Gen Con. And this new RPG kit, Cyberpunk Red, is going to be a story that actually ties the world of Cyberpunk 2020 into the world of Cyberpunk 2077. It bridges the gap. It's also meant to be a tabletop RPG for beginners. So they've gone back, cleaned up because it's an old RPG, and old RPGs are notorious for having really convoluted rule systems.
I was going to ask if this was based on the new rule system that was coming out, or
so the creator went back through, cleaned up the rules to Cyberpunk.
Okay.
Worked with CD Projekt Red on working on a story that bridges the gap between the two, and wanted to make a tabletop RPG for someone like, say, you, Hector, who maybe plays Cyberpunk 2077, would think it'd be really cool to play a tabletop RPG in that world.
Right.
But first off, the Cyberpunk 2020 books are always sold out. They don't really reprint them that often.
Yeah, that hasn't been in circulation for a while.
Yeah, and those rules are just so archaic that you would look at them and go like, why would this be fun to me?
Right, it'd be something that is very daunting for a beginner, especially
Right.
someone just coming into it from a video game perspective, where the game, in that sense, is all played for
So
you.
I have a question about this. I thought in the like super special edition, whatever that comes with a steelbook case and everything, they actually said there is going to be a RPG book in it.
I don't know. I haven't checked that one.
I thought that's one of the things I was reading.
It could.
And I think that it might be the same one. Maybe it's another supplement. They're like, cool, you got the first one. Here's more of it plus more of the game.
There was a special edition of The Witcher 3 that came with actual like decks of Gwent cards.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah.
So it's going to be pretty cool though. This is only going to be a $30 buy-in for this tabletop game, which is a pretty low bar for as far as like
Yeah.
D&D style.
I mean,
books.
that's basically a supplement.
Right, and so it's going to come with a book. It's going to come with a custom cyberpunk dice.
Nice.
They look
Nice.
pretty. They look pretty cool.
Nice dice.
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
just going to be about trying to get more people into playing tabletop RPGs, which
Yeah.
is somebody who's a longtime LARPer and tabletop player.
All right,
I'm all
well,
about that life.
Okay, so it's going to be first on sale at Gen Con.
Yes.
And like, are we going to be able to buy it like online or something?
Yes, it'll be
or-
available. It's going to go for sale during Gen Con. It'll be available online. Also, you can go to drivethroughrpg.com where you can
Okay.
just buy a digital version of it. So if
Nice.
you just wanna
Okay, that's
buy
good.
they want
And
to
they
make
generally,
sure.
most of the time, that you go through drive-through and you're getting Dutch the digital one, because
Yeah.
you're not going to get the special edition dice. They generally have it a little bit cheaper. So you're just buying a digital product.
The way it's going to work is that Gen Con's going to have the initial sales, and the day that they go on sale at Gen Con, you can get the digital copy, and then just a little bit after Gen Con, you can get the physical copy that was being sold
Cool.
at Gen Con.
Okay, awesome. I mean, this is something I want to pick up. So
Yeah, I mean, if I don't have a ton of experience with tabletop RPGs, so like this would be something to get me into one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I did is a little bit something for you at the beginning, Hector. I got something for you in here, Tony. I want to talk a little bit about Destiny 2.
Okay.
In the news this week, we found out that there's a big problem in Destiny right now. And the good news that kind of came out of all of this is that, or bad news, depending on who you are, is that these problems aren't going to be fixed anytime soon. And the reason for this, well, Tony, why don't you talk about it?
Okay. To kind of explain this,
Tell us about the thing.
to give you some more information about the thing. Right now, there is a weapon that in the PvP aspect of the game is a little bit overpowered.
Grenade launchers, right?
No, it's
No.
specifically a gun called Lord of Wolves.
Oh, okay.
It was a pretty okay gun. Nobody really used it. It wasn't meme worthy or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But on the most recent patch update, they changed some numbers on it, and people, always figuring out what the best guns to
Yeah.
use for certain things are, discovered that if you can get this one perk to proc, which is very easy to get to proc by just doing a simple maneuver, you can annihilate anybody that's in front of you with one shot.
Nice.
And at like insane distances. It's more of a problem on PC than it is on console because of the recoil direction is way easier to control on a
Yeah.
mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, probably a little bit easier to.
So right now, this is running rampant in at least on PC's version of PvP. Most notably because this is the 1 week a month where we have Iron Banner, which is the PvP centric
Oh no!
mode.
It's ruining Iron Banner.
It's ruining Iron Banner.
Oh.
But Luke Smith, the game's like the head of one of the things that Bungie, I can't remember what the fucking actual title is. He game director. I think that's what
Sure.
it is. Came out and he did a blog post and he's like, "Hey, we know this is a problem. Like we're not idiots. We actively know that this is an issue. We're not fixing it until probably at least next month."
They just have other things in front of it.
To preserve the work-life balance for the employees because of how hard they're working and getting ready for this next expansion coming out in September for all the things that they're doing, plus doing live updates to the game, it's just too much. And I think right now a bunch of people are on vacation.
That's ballsy.
He straight up says, like, I'm not bringing in people off their vacation to fix this. It's going to suck for this week and suck for a little while longer, but probably by the next Iron Banner, we'll have a patch in place and we'll have changed the numbers. But in the meantime, if you play a game this week, you get a special title and a special triumph, and to all commemorate the "oops, we fucked up."
I'm super in favor of this move. The more I see companies actually putting into action, not crunching their employees and telling us about it, I'm all in favor.
That was one of the things that Bungie, whenever they came into making Destiny 2, even though it had a failed launch, and that was, we can tell it was Activision's fault for why that game was not the way that players wanted it. But they already, even with that, they said, we are not going to force our employees to work overtime and do crunch hours and do all the shitty video game stuff.
Yeah.
And that was in the beginning of Destiny 2, and they haven't done it this entire time. They've been like, no, we let people have the weekends off. People come in whenever they need to or they want to. If you want to work extra hours, cool. And actually, they'll tell people, like, you're working too much. You are not allowed to come into work anymore because you're working too much. Yeah. And, like,
and yeah,
so this
it does
an
kind
awesome move.
So it can kind of suck for the people that are really heavily invested in PvP right now.
Like right now, whenever I'm playing it, I get annoyed whenever I get Lord of the Wolves in my face.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not so rampant that... There was a glitch a while ago. This is the very first year of Destiny 2's life. It was a gun that came out called Prometheus Lens. Mm-hmm. They obviously did not test this gun in PvP because it one-shot killed everything. Instantly. Death. We started playing laser tag with it. And for that week, it was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But they had to bring people in and immediately patch it because it was so broken they couldn't keep that around forever. This is when Trials still existed and all that. It was just too broken.
Oh yeah,
they allowed it to exist for 1 week, and they said they actually let Xur. They actually changed it where Xur sold it just to make sure everybody would have
everyone in Trials.
Yeah,
had it.
Everyone would have it for Trials to have laser tag week, and we were asking them like, hey, can you bring that back for just like a fun mode that you can just put in where you just laser tag. It's fun. And people are enjoying that about Lord of Wolves right now. Some people are being dicks with it. You run an entire team of 6 because they're being dicks.
Right.
But the most part, you only run into like 1 or 2 people using it, and you can tell they're using it as a crutch, that they're not really good PvP players. They saw a YouTube video of somebody being like, this is the most OP thing, and they're trying it out, and you go, that's cool, sweet summer child. I'm going to kill you from really far away now.
Yeah. So I just thought it was important to bring this up because we do talk so often on this show about how there are so many game companies out there that are really kind of screwing over their employees.
Yeah.
And for Bungie to come out and say, like, look, the reason this isn't getting patched when it needs to be is because, we need to have time to ourselves and take a vacation and clear our heads. We don't want to push our employees to that.
They're already getting ready for a huge fall release. Or September. I don't know. What is September still summer? It is in Texas, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it'll be summer until like November.
Yeah, so I still count
57th.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is like they're pushing out a huge update to the game and a whole new season pass that they don't have Activision backing them. They don't have other studios helping them out anymore. They're doing it themselves. So I think that when they're like, hey, we're on vacation right now. Sorry, it's broke, but deal with it. And we're like, cool, we get that.
I have one more thing to say about this because I just now thought of it because of an article I read earlier today about how Epic Games is giving the Fortnite developers a fortnight of vacation time. They get 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. And obviously this is a good thing, especially if those guys don't normally get time off, especially considering the litany of lawsuits being hurled against Epic Games by its own employees. Here's also what I see, and not to accuse Bungie of this, but when I see companies doing things more like, hey, here's some time off, please don't be mad at us anymore. We all keep hearing talks about trying to get game developers to unionize.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what I don't want is to see companies trying to butter up their employees while handing out the anti-union literature.
Hold on to that thought. We're going to come back to it here in just a little bit. All right?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was wanting to bring up in our boss room because I already kind of thought of that idea for that.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about unions a little bit later in the main segment here.
Oh, really?
I just want to bounce over to DC real quick, actually.
Yeah.
So a year ago, we talked about how DC had brought back and revitalized their Vertigo imprint.
Yep.
It was a really exciting time. Everybody was waiting for all the new Vertigo books to come out.
Yeah, all those books that they said were coming. They didn't give us the titles or
there was a lot of them.
They
did come out. I mean, Constantine got his own set. We had some new Sandman stuff. There's a lot of good things happen from the Vertigo imprint. But as of this last week, the Vertigo imprint is officially dead. So what DC has done is instead of having DC and all these other variations of DC, like DC Kids or Vertigo or all of this, DC is going to have 3 categories going forward. It's going to be DC Kids, DC, and DC Black Label starting in January.
Okay, so
they're going to let everybody finish their runs for Vertigo.
Right.
Does that mean the Vertigo stuff now becomes DC Black?
Becomes DC Black, should it fall under the 17 and older content.
Gotcha. Otherwise,
so I was reading a lot of interviews with the people that work behind the scenes at DC, and they were talking about making this change. And of course, they have a lot of reverence and love for the Vertigo brand. But they talked a little bit about how Vertigo's inception was really created at a time where they wanted to have a comics line that was like dark and edgy.
They wanted to have something so they can compete against Image.
And so
it's literally why they created
they
it.
said, instead of a lot of the things that we considered dark and edgy 15 years ago when Vertigo was, in its prime,
Right.
really is just part of storytelling now.
Yeah.
Right. Like you just have
Because that's because Vertigo was able to push the boundary of storytelling and to tell those types of stories to where they've got people started writing more about them in the regular genre. But for me, this isn't so much about the darkness that was Vertigo.
Right.
It was that Vertigo was a place to tell non-DC stories under the DC bit label. These were not Superman stories. These were not Batman stories.
Right.
These were interesting, unique stories that were outside of the norm of the big two.
Right, and that's not going to be. It doesn't need that anymore. DC's going to still be publishing, Sandman and Constantine and whatever other things that are not superhero related. It will just come down to a matter of what is the age level content for this. Is it is this a kid's story? Is this 13 and up, or is this 17 and up?
Right.
And that's how they're going to evaluate each comic that comes across DC.
I totally get
That's
that,
good.
and I like that idea of having this a branded age set. I just wish that they kept Vertigo around for things that were different.
Well,
Something that was
that's a really good question. Like, now that we're in modern times and we won't have Vertigo, but we'll have DC Black Label, would something like Sandman ever get published under it?
yeah,
Would
because
something
Sandman's
like
loosest creation, or sorry, not creation, spillover into the main DC was that in one of the dream sequence sections you see like Superman symbol, you see I think like Batman symbol or whatever, like the name, somebody's name is mentioned once.
Right,
That,
but, I mean,
that's
like-
to show that they exist. That Sandman as a actually the original Sandman also shows up. The original Sandman, the guy that had a gun and the mask and everything, shows up in one of the issues. Actually, I think all these things happen in the same issue.
Yeah.
Well,
And it was
forgive
to
me-
show that there's an alternate reality where this character exists called Sandman.
But forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I don't think I am. I mean, V for Vendetta, it's Vertigo.
Vertigo, yeah.
It was put out in America in
has
Vertigo.
zero references to any DC.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was
Right.
it was the original.
So would something like that come out on?
I
Black
think that
Label?
we're jumping ahead of ourselves here and assuming that if it is under just a DC label, then it has to tie into the DC universe in
or
some
be an
way.
existing DC
Right,
property. Since right now all the Black Label comics are Batman.
Right, and DC's absolutely coming out right now and saying, no, we're going to publish things that are not superhero comics. They just need to fall under one of these three
The
banners.
stuff Jared
This
Way's
needs to be-
doing is
this just needs
Black
to be
Label.
under the clean these three things. It can
Okay.
be an original story. It can
Okay.
do its own thing. It doesn't have to have Superman in it. It just needs to be able. Where do we classify it when we put it on shelves?
That could be a really big thing for them, considering the well
Yeah.
that has run
Absolutely.
dry lately.
Yeah, I kind of answer me on things. I know Jared Way's been doing stuff with DC Black Label that's not Superman, Batman stuff.
that's good.
That's his own separate thing. So that kind of answered what the future for DC Black Label is and the future for Vertigo. It seems like they are going to have odd stories that aren't superhero centric. Things that like, because I liked, there's the story, it was like a 6-issue thing called like Punk Rock Jesus.
Yes.
There's this weird story about genetically bringing like Jesus back from the Shadow Turin and this whole government conspiracy
It's a
stuff.
weird- it was a
It
weird
was
time.
very
It sounds
odd and
fun.
very weird, but you can't really tell that in a DC world, right?
Right.
As long as they keep putting out stuff like that under
Yeah.
DC Black Label, sure, keep this going. Otherwise, I mean, Image is going to gain more
and just
ground
remember, if
in
this whole
telling
thing
cool
doesn't
stories.
work out, this is the world of comics, and the Vertigo label will just get resurrected.
I mean,
you could probably
they
relaunch
own the
Vertigo
rights to that.
tomorrow.
yeah, you
It
could.
wouldn't be a big
yeah,
deal.
you just relaunch Vertigo tomorrow and call it a day.
But cheers, this is to Vertigo.
To Vertigo.
You'll be missed.
Yeah, you will be missed. Okay, let's continue in the world of comics. I want to talk very briefly about the Dark Crystal.
Yes.
So Netflix is apparently going like all in on this whole Dark Crystal thing.
Well, did you see the trailer?
Like we know,
I refuse to watch the trailer.
we know that they're.
You are missing out, sir.
I'm going.
Look, there's
I will
nothing
believe.
that can be spoiled for you because the story didn't make sense in the first
I love
movie.
Dark Crystal. I like the story. It's
I
a
know,
good story.
but what you're missing out on is the frankly short trailer where they show you how amazing the puppets look, how amazing
I
the
will
CG
see
looks.
it.
How
I do not
amazing
believe it actually
everything
exists.
looks.
I do not believe it actually
I'm
exists.
so excited from this short trailer just because of how fucking incredible
It will
everything
exist
looks.
when it's actually on my Netflix and I'm watching it. Until then, I do not believe this exists. It can't exist. They've tried it way too many times. I've had announcement after announcement for 15 years.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when somebody does a remaster of a video game and you load it up and you look at it and you're like, the game always looked like this. And then you go back and you look at the original one and you're like, no, gross. What was I doing? That looked, I don't even know what that block of things is.
Yeah.
This is what the game looked like as you look at the remaster. That's exactly how Dark Crystal feels when I watch that trailer. It feels like this always looked like this. This is what my nostalgia tells me this movie always looked like, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really feels like a full realization of Jim Henson's
For
vision.
real.
Keeping that in mind, we talked about at E3 they're going to be getting a Dark Crystal video game.
Yeah.
That's going to be coming out. It's a tactical game. But it was announced this week that there's going to be a comic that's going to be coming out. Netflix is working with Boom Studios, and it's going to be a 12-issue series called Dark Crystal: Age of Resonance, Age of Resistance.
Okay.
And the
Crystal.
the whole concept behind it is kind of bridging everything between the original Dark Crystal to where we are now with the Netflix series.
Cool.
I'm super into that. The Dark Crystal world has had comic books in the past.
Yes.
It's had books in the recent past. Because I remember trying to enter a book contest thing about my story ideas for Dark Crystal. And then finally we are getting the Netflix thing. Theoretically, we'll see if it actually comes out. It's just, I love the fact that the Henson Company and Dark Crystal is finally getting the love and the attention that it deserves. Because
true.
Dark Crystal is one of those amazing stories that everybody just kind of overlooked. Because it was Jim Henson's last story. He died during its
He had a lot of problems getting it made.
yeah, nobody wanted to make it. Was too
look
fucking
at
dark.
it. Yeah.
I know.
He was like, I'm gonna make a really darkly depressed, fucked up children's story, and everybody's like, no, you're not.
But look at how much amazing shit we got out of Don Bluth. They really should let people make darker children's stories.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
we're always adamant for children's horror, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah, for real.
think that Dark Crystal isn't necessarily horror, but it definitely
I feel like
gave
it
me some
falls-
fucking nightmares as a child.
It falls into that old Don Bluth quote that is, there is no light without the darkness. And when you make a children's story, it's just sweet in too grand of a way without having some darkness, without having some stakes.
yeah, absolutely.
Ask me before we end this section how I watched The Dark Crystal for the first time.
Okay.
Come on, how did you watch The Dark Crystal for the first time? Just go for it.
On a UMD on a PlayStation Vita.
Wow.
Or on a-
Yeah.
on a PSP.
Yeah, a PSP is what I mean, yes.
Yeah.
That before the Vita, when they
Yeah.
had the little UMDs.
The little tiny little baby DVD
Yep.
disc.
That was
My girlfriend at the my living girlfriend at the time really wanted a PlayStation. What did you call it? A PSP.
PSP,
Yeah, and
I have 5 of them.
yeah, and so there were all the games that came on the little disc, and a few movies, and one of them was The Dark Crystal for some reason. And she was like, "Yeah, it's like Labyrinth." I'm like, "Okay, I know Labyrinth." She's like, "Dude, you're 19. You've never seen this movie," and just plugs it in to the TV through her PSP, and it was the coolest experience ever because it was a great movie, and I watched it for the first time when I was 19.
Wow,
I mean, I'm glad you got to watch it.
Yeah.
That's the weird way of watching
Yeah,
it.
that's why I wanted to tell that story.
I saw it, I think, on VHS, and that's how I watched it.
That's how she watched it too. I was the
probably
weird one.
4 or 5 when I first saw
I think
it.
it's on HBO or something when I was a kid.
Sounds about right.
Let's see here. Also in the news, in the world of comics, we found out this week that J.J. Abrams and his son have gotten together with Marvel, and they're going to be doing a new limited Spider-Man series.
Okay.
Wait, like a cartoon?
Nope.
The comic?
Nope. It's a comic.
Oh, it's
comic book?
Okay.
Straight up comic.
J.J. Abrams and his son are writing a
5-issue
Spider-Man comic book together?
J.J. Abrams can write a story.
There-
Yeah.
We'll see if his son can draw, I guess.
They're introducing an original villain. So it's
Is
gonna
it
be,
the smoke monster?
probably is the smoke.
I feel like there've
Is
been
it the
too
plot
many.
line from Lost?
I feel like there've been too many amorphous
Is it
cloud
the plot of
monsters in
Lost that finally
Spider-Man
showed back
already.
up?
Yeah, no, he's going to introduce the plot of the show Lost as a villain, and it's just going to
He's
confuse
gonna-
everybody.
Spider-Man's gonna fight a smoke monster, and then there'll be a polar bear, and then it'll end.
Yeah.
And it'll all have been like Aunt May's dream.
That sounds about right.
Her fever dream is she's dying from cancer, and that's how it ends.
All right, so our last bit of news for the week. I want to dial back to that conversation we were having about unions just a minute ago, because that actually is how I planned on wrapping this entire segment up.
All right.
And that is, we found out this week that Take-Two has a very interesting opinion about unions.
Is it interesting?
Is it
in
that they
fact-
don't want them anywhere near them?
So this is the company that is above Rockstar, right?
Yeah,
Take Two is the parent company for Rockstar Games.
It's getting to the point where when we talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, the one that just came out, we talk more about Take-Two than we do about Rockstar.
Right. So the head of Take-Two says he can't imagine, in fact, he finds it very hard to imagine why his employees would ever want to unionize.
What?
Can he read? Because there have been articles written about his company recently. Pretty recently.
So
that literally explains all of the reasons.
The figures that he quotes as he talks about this, and I could sit here and read his entire quote.
Please tell me he told us how much money he made.
It talks about how much money his developers make.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
And he was basically like, this is how much the average developer makes for working for Take-Two.
Oh, please tell me.
Why would they want to unionize?
Well, is he implying, sir, that if they unionize, their salaries will drop?
It kind of feels like that's what he's saying.
Because the opposite always happens. Because
I
you
think
can
that he-
negotiate
I
collectively
think that
for better
collective
wages.
bargaining rights is a thing that unions do.
I think that his argument here is that we pay them so much they wouldn't want to unionize, when the fact is he's missing the point when he has
100%
this discussion.
missing the point.
Because this unionization in video games industry isn't just about money. In fact, it has more to do with how employees are treated and factors like crunch time.
Or maybe having leave for having children. Maybe actually seeing your child's first year of life instead of going, cool, you had a baby, I'm still at work.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You could pay me.
Go render that goat.
Yeah, I mean, these are maybe we have work-life balance.
You could pay me $100,000 a month. And it still isn't worth sleeping under my desk, never seeing my family, and feeling like if I do have
working
a
80-hour work
day,
weeks,
working 80-hour work weeks as the norm.
Yeah, as the norm. Like
Sometimes
that's just
it's
what you
more.
do.
But also, if I have a sick day or deign to take a day off during crunch time, I'm in serious fear for my job.
That if you come back from having
or whether you're
sick,
going to get blacklisted,
or whether I'm going to get blacklisted from the next project. No, there's no amount of money you can pay me to force me to work under those conditions.
It just seems like a very blind statement that he made because
So here's all this money.
Feels very
be
ignorant,
miserable
actually, to me.
forever because you can make all the money in the world is my point. And if you don't have any adequate time to spend it and to enjoy it, why are you doing it?
Yeah. And it's ridiculous because we just talked earlier in the episode about Bungie and how they're kind of doing things and trying to make sure there's a work-life balance and people get to take time off, and that's fantastic.
Which is great.
But then we have somebody who's the head of Take-Two, which when you hear the head of Take-Two, when I say that phrase, it should automatically make a cash register noise.
Oh yeah, we're talking a probably a billionaire at that point. Like not millionaires, like all these petty millionaires. We have a dime a dozen, and we're up to here with fucking millionaires.
Right.
I'm talking about a billionaire. This is one of 500 people in the United States of America that controls enough money to buy countries.
Yeah.
That's the person saying we pay you so much money, literally less than he made while he was taking a shit while composing the tweet I'm sure he used to say that shit. We pay them so much. Why would they ever want to enjoy their lives? Is basically what he said.
Yeah.
While he does nothing but enjoy his life with his money.
Mm-hmm. He looked at those Red Dead Redemption sales numbers and just said, "Well, I gotta get a second bank vault.
Yeah, exactly.
To swim around my fucking money."
Yeah, while your employees have literally been sleeping under their fucking desks for months while they were making that goddamn game.
Yep.
And then you tried to hide the fact. They're like, oh, yeah, we didn't have crunch time at all on Red Dead 2. When it comes to find out, some of the worst crunch time in fucking game history came from Red Dead 2. So fuck you.
And I got to tell you, listeners, if you are getting furious about this and the idea of a major video game company saying something stupid makes you really angry, you may want to stick around for our boss room because we're going to be talking a lot about EA and some of the things they said this week, and it's going to be one doozy of a discussion. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be going into the boss room.
Yeah, buckle up.
You love getting angry.
I love getting angry.
Could you get me a cider?
Yeah, will you grab me a drink? This fucking cat won't get off my lap.
Yeah, do you want...
I keep annoyingly petting him.
IPA or a weird watermelon zebra drink?
I personally don't care.
You want a triple?
I don't give a shit.
I'll get you your old...
What were you going to forward to us? If this is about what they said in the UK, then probably.
You have to open that for me, though.
I do, don't I?
Yes, you do.
What's the EA thing that you had in mind? Yeah, link us to it. It's entirely possible that's what we're
Yeah, I think
talking about.
you're the admin of the fucking page. You should be able to just fucking send us whatever link you want. Thank you.
Ah, yes,
Yeah,
that's
yes,
exactly what we're going to be talking about. Welcome to the discussion. It's going to be
I think I need to remember. I had a thing because she brought up Kinder eggs, and I thought I had a fun thought about.
You got
that.
a good analogy for Kinder.
I know I didn't have a good analogy. I had a fun thought.
I figured you were going to go with like surprise butt sex or something with this, but
no.
surprisingly.
No, I'm gonna try and save this. I really wish I could fucking turn more.
No, well,
Don't
I
you
mean,
have a
you
button
can
to
turn it
save?
a little.
Yes, but we are going to be talking about surprise mechanics. It's going to be a lot of fun.
316, right?
Yes, 316.
This is the Austin episode.
Wait.
We could have called it like John Favreau 316. I don't know. He lives in Austin, right? He has a house here.
Everybody
has a house here.
Yeah.
Except for
Well,
us.
everybody on the west.
Well, I don't own a house here.
Everybody that's famous has a house on the west side, unless you're fucking what's his name, fucking Frodo, and then you live in South Austin.
That's where all the cool kids are.
We're not a political podcast, but the median house of a home in Austin is now over $400,000. Yay!
Yeah,
All right, so let's
we're
talk
never
about
owning houses in our lifetime.
let's talk about EA.
We're
Let's
not
talk
that
about
generation. Tony.
Also, we're gonna die before that anyway.
All right, let's
Global warming or war, one of them's fucking killing us.
Probably both.
Oh, I need to click boss room.
Boss room.
Ooh, look at that.
Damn it. There. Get back over here. Boss room.
Hey, adventurers, welcome back to the show. All right, it's the boss room. It's our main talking point for the podcast, sometimes related to the news, sometimes not. This week, we're going to be talking a lot about EA. So we're going to start things off talking about EA.
Did they do anything good?
Yeah, absolutely. They did do something good this week.
What did they do that was good?
So a bunch of the CEO and a bunch of the other executives for EA decided to not get their big cash bonus payouts that they get once a year or whenever it is they do it, and instead decided to reallocate those funds to give employees a bonus. To just say thank you for all the work you
Okay,
put
so
in.
it's like management said, hey, we're going to take our millions and millions and millions of dollars that we pay ourselves
Yes.
and divide that between our millions and millions of employees.
No, see, and that's the thing. I would love to see the breakdown on that.
Yeah.
Like money-wise, because we could be talking about tens of millions of dollars in bonuses distributed among generously like 25,000 employees.
Yeah.
It could actually be a decent sum depending on how it turns out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It could.
It could.
Yeah, but we don't. Are we ever gonna know that?
We know that there was at least 4.8 million that was going to be paid out, and a possible other 20 million that might be.
I was gonna say the 20 million sounds more like it. 4.8 sounds like they like look at their bonus and we're like, "You'll give them this."
The 20 million comes from a head of EA that left and had all this extra funds that was allocated, so they're going to distribute that. But yeah, this was the good news for the week was EA was saying like, look, we need to take care of our employees. Let's take all these bonuses. Let's not get these bonuses. Let's distribute it out to them because they're putting in all the actual fucking work.
That's the please don't unionize.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
That's actually that's exactly what it is. It's the hey, we're giving you some vacation time and these bonuses. Here's the pamphlet of why unions are bad because we just gave you a bunch of money. So don't do that.
This reminds me of right after the tax cut when Walmart was like, every employee might get like a $400 bonus right now. And it's like, well, you have X number of employees times a $400 bonus per employee. That's like, I don't know, like $3.4 million. You just saved $10 billion. What are you going to do with that money? Mostly buy back our own stock and then like close a couple of stores in Utah.
Yeah.
So, of course, you can't have any good EA Newsweek without, like, just somebody shitting all over it, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just the par for the course for EA, right?
Every time EA does something good, like, its butt just fires off a turd in the other direction.
Or it's because they just fired off a turd and they're trying to cover up that turd with
Which is
something
what
better.
this is.
That is very, very true. So, we had the Vice President of Legal and Government Affairs at EA sit in front of the House of Parliament about loot boxes. Very important topic. We've been talking about it a lot on the podcast about whether they're ethical, whether they're not, whether they're gambling. It's a big to-do in the industry right now.
It's been going on for well over a year now, and multiple countries are all getting involved. The U.S. has been making some statements on, or not statements, some groundwork on loot box fixings.
Yeah.
How we're gonna get rid of them and or make them better.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do to video games. This is not just a us thing. It's internationally. Every country has been
We've
making
spent
changes.
the better part of a year on this podcast talking
Yeah,
about
let's
this
not
very
forget that
topic.
all of the laws in the gaming part of Asia all have to do with companies needing to disclose the actual odds in their loot boxes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that is a mandatory thing that India has to do.
I see. That was one of the things whenever they first brought up with China, saying like, no, you have to give us the percentages chance of getting these objects.
Because otherwise you're full of shit and you're selling fake boxes.
Because it's digital items. You can make
Right.
up whatever fucking number you want
absolutely.
on them, and then you can make something stupidly rare because you moved a decimal point.
Right.
Like, it's that easy. These things don't actually exist. They are made up digital nonsense. So companies can fuck with them as much as they want and rip off little kids all goddamn day long.
Yep.
Because that's what they feel their right is.
So you ready to get into this mess?
I mean,
'Cause
you just already got me ranting already. So
Yeah, I mean, we
fuck
haven't
it.
even started yet.
Yeah.
So before, and I did watch several videos of this whole thing going down. When they start to address the issue of loot boxes, Kerry Hopkins steps in and says, basically almost refuses to call these things loot boxes.
Oh yeah, I think at one
unless-
point she said we don't sell loot boxes.
Yeah, we do not have loot boxes.
So
Like, we
let's
don't
just
have
start with
loot boxes
that.
in our game.
She literally said we don't sell loot boxes because that word's dirty in the industry right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Except for the
it's-
fact that in their games they're literally called loot boxes, like in Star Wars and
Oh, yeah.
like, I can't remember what other.
It says loot box across the top.
Yeah, like that's just what it is. And so I guess you just lied to start with.
Yep.
You just lied to fucking Parliament. Like that's like a Donald Trump level of like you say something
this
so
thing that you see right here. You see this thing? You don't see it.
right. It was literally
bright, glowing, neon, blinking sign totally does not
I
say
feel
what you think
somebody
it
in
says.
Parliament could have just done a quick Google search and been like, I'm pretty sure that says loot box, right? This is your product, right? It says that, right? So she flat out refuses to use the word loot box and then calls it fucking, oh God, this fucking gets me so riled up. Surprise mechanics.
I have the worst time with this vocabulary strictly because there's a joke
Go
about a
for it.
thing. I don't like to tell rape jokes. That's usually not. It's not funny. But there's an old joke about it's not rape. It's surprise sex.
Right.
So as soon as I heard it's not a loot box, it's surprise mechanics.
Your brain that's a rape.
I about died laughing
Right.
because she basically, in my mind, and in the mind of probably most people who have the internet and are my age, she basically just called loot boxes rape.
I've heard the same joke, and I honestly had the same similar thought cross my mind
Yeah.
as soon as I was like watching the video of her, and I was like, cool. no, just like head in a hand. Yeah. I was like, no, just don't.
This is the worst move you could have pulled, basically.
And so, as somebody who, I would know in college I was an English major, and I really do believe in the power of strong vocabulary and language in general. It's something that we see very much in our current political system. Again, we're not a political podcast,
right?
But one of the things that gets argued over a lot of times is semantics right now.
Yeah, what's a concentration camp?
Right. That's something that's actually being discussed.
Yeah, we
over the last week
we are having giant debates over what the definition of a concentration camp is.
And so words.
This is the world that we're in.
Right. So words have power and meaning.
Yes, they do.
Going and trying, and what EA is trying to do in this instance is they're trying to flip the script on what is negative. So the negative in the industry and what everybody, the word that everybody in the political world is latched onto is loot box, because they're only now trying to educate themselves about this because they're not video game people.
Yeah, no, you could tell that the guy was asking the questions.
Lawyers.
Right, they are. So they're trying to understand this currently morally gray area, and so loot box is their term.
Right.
And so one of the things that you'll see if you actually ever watch a real court case, not like just some like
Judge Judy or something,
nothing like that, is that oftentimes, and hell, even in high school debate, you did this. You argue over the definition of words.
Yep.
Like that's how you try to catch
your
opponent.
You have to define your terms.
Yeah, define your terms, do all of this. And what they're trying to do is flip the script, because the negative connotation is the negative words are loot box.
Right.
And so EA says what we're going to do is we're going to change the words so that they don't have that negative connotation, so we call them surprise mechanics. This is like the most vile form of fucking thing they could possibly do in this instance.
Of everything that you do with language, this feels probably the most Orwellian. It's not what it looks like and what we used to say it is. It's actually this other thing now. Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the 2
Still
plus 2.
the same thing. And you know what? I trusted in the past, and we've done this in the past. We went all the way to the Supreme Court with all kinds of video game stuff before. But it was all about censorship. It was all about, is this a children's toy with boobs on it? Right. No, this is a medium that we tell stories in, just like movies. It's protected under free speech, etc., etc. I trusted them to do all of that. They've done censorship before with movies and books, comics, all the way back. This is different. This is them trying to figure out how to regulate something like gambling, which is not a machine you wheel into a bar that kids can't go into. It's literally something accessible by anyone on the little computers in their pockets. So how do we fix this? How do we keep children from gambling? Which is
how do we solve for X in this?
Right, which is very obviously what's happening now.
And it's specifically, we know that these companies are targeting children. Look at a game like Fortnite, which has loot boxes massively in it.
Oh, yeah.
That game is specifically designed for children. Yep. I don't care. I mean, you look at that game, you go, that's a kid's game. And
it looks one step up from Minecraft in terms of like bright colors, big animations, bombastic, colorful, cartoon-like animations.
Yeah, no, it's
dances.
If you think of something that is childlike, you think of all of those things.
Yeah. And I don't want to use childlike in a negative connotation.
No, it's
things that are childlike are great.
Yeah, that's also because kids understand more basic shapes and colors, and brighter colors are more
and
drawn
frankly,
to
it
them.
all looks and comes across like an episode of freaking Adventure Time.
Yeah.
It's very attractive to a child.
Peppa Pig and shit looks exactly the fucking same. Like, I'm just getting, it's what we're saying is that there's a motif that you can see in childlike things.
Yes.
And this is, I guess I'll kind of get to one of the points I wanted to make. She said that surprise mechanics are, so they said people here in this country, meaning the UK, it was like they like Kinder eggs, and they have their little chocolates with toys inside. And it was like, and my immediate thought was if I give my kids $60 to buy a game, and then give him another $120 to buy all the loot boxes. If he did the same thing with Kinder Eggs, he'd have fucking childhood diabetes.
Yeah, he would die of an overdose. And you know what? If I saw him come home with $160 worth of chocolate, I sure as fuck wouldn't let him eat it.
Wouldn't let him fucking eat it because he'd get fucking diabetes. But you know what we will do? We'll let him have a fucking gambling addiction for the rest of his fucking life because we let him spend $120 on these loot boxes for a game because you didn't quite understand what the fuck they were.
Right, whatever you think psychologically about addiction and how gambling it falls into that Venn diagram. Would you as a parent ever, and none of us are, but still, would you as a parent find your 7-year-old and buy him 100 random opening boxes and let him open them all at once just to see what's inside? That sounds like the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do for a child, because the second he's done, he's going to be like, I need more.
So what we
Kids don't understand the idea of like you get a little bit now and then like you wait a while and you get a little bit more later. It's I can't remember the fucking
So
word for
what we
that.
have here is that she compared the loot boxes to specifically Kinder Eggs, Hatchimals, which is a toy that's kind of a blind box toy. We have there was a couple other ones that I'm not as intimately familiar with, but this idea that is a random toy item that you
Yeah, no, I
collect.
collect vinyl toys,
Right.
and they are in blind boxes, meaning I don't know what I'm going to get. It tells me a percentage chance of like 2 out of every 50 is one of these. I'm like, cool.
Right.
I like most of the designs. I'll get what I get,
Yeah.
and I buy a few of them. The reason why I buy a few of them is because they're not fucking cheap.
Yeah.
I can't buy hundreds of them at a fucking time
Well, and-
because I understand how my money works. I have a job. I understand where money goes and what
Well,
it
it's
costs to
not
live.
just you.
Children don't know that,
Right.
so they're like, credit card, buy all the things.
Here's why all of these arguments are stupid, and it's all about barriers of resistance
Mm-hmm.
and how they break down. Because what does a kid do with Kinder Eggs? He walks in with his $5 of allowance and maybe goes ham and buys like 10 Kinder Eggs and eats
I think
all the
it's more like
chocolate.
2.
Yeah, he eats all the chocolate and is like, oh my God. And then the guy in the store is like, fine, this kid, he bought like $5 worth of Kinder Eggs. He probably has a stomach ache tomorrow, whatever. If the kid the next day came in with his dad's credit card and said, give me 100 Kinder Eggs, I know you have 1,000 in there, give me 100. The man behind the counter would probably not do that.
Right.
And if he did do it and watch the kid come back 10 pounds heavier, with obvious problems with eating 100 Kinder Eggs, and then said, now give me 500, the person selling him these Kinder Eggs to do this would have to be a giant human piece of shit.
Yeah.
Because it'd be
You
like...
have- you have-
like tobacco level company
he
piece
would
of
literally
shit.
be looking at this, and this is human to human. So at this point, he's like, I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should call this boy's father. He's trying to
Right.
spend $2,000 on Kinder Eggs. We need to make him stop. Another barrier. This kid takes 100 Kinder Eggs home, plops them down in his home, starts eating them until one of his parents comes in and goes, oh my God, what did you do? And slaps him in the back of the head. It takes them all away because it's not responsible to let him do all of that at once.
Right.
And again, not everybody's a good parent.
No,
either,
but the thing is, there are responsible human barriers to entry, not just on the parent side, but also on the
Societal
store
side.
side, the societal side. Any grandmother walking down the street watching a kid try and hold 1,000 Kinder Eggs
Well,
in
and
his
I
arms, would go, no, stop
And
that.
I don't know if I have
what the
the.
fuck are you even doing with all
Right.
those?
So imagine we remove all those barriers. So what we have now is a situation where a kid can anonymously walk up to a store with his dad's credit card, buy $1,000 worth of Kinder Eggs, and just consume them all at once with no parent involved, no store shopkeeper involved, and no one to watch what this kid's doing because it's all happening digitally.
Oh yeah, and one of the things that has been said over the course of the week when people have been speaking out, trying to defend this loot box practice, is there's been some companies that have come out and said, and it may have been even I apologize. I normally fact check, and I actually have this in front of me, but this is just I just remembered this quote.
Okay.
It was something along the lines of, the tools exist within Xbox Marketplace and PSN to be able to have things like loot boxes. Whether or not they go into games is out of our hands, or they're just a tool that a developer can utilize. Basically saying if the tool exists, then you should utilize it.
That's
Cool.
insane.
I get that. Did anybody watch Chernobyl?
Or
Like maybe because we can use nuclear energy, we fucking don't do that.
well, Chernobyl, did anyone watch Requiem for a Dream?
Yeah.
I mean, just
Right.
because something exists doesn't mean we should be using it.
Right, that's
Yeah,
that's
there you
the
go,
question,
too.
right? Like I read this quote, and it was possibly by EA, and it was just, and it was like because the tools exist, then like they should be able to utilize them. I'm like,
Right.
but would you say that about heroin?
Yeah,
Like, that was
yeah.
the first thought that popped into my head. Was like,
And would
heroin
you set up a
exists.
store specifically designed to sell heroin to children? Because it exists.
Well,
Right.
And kids deserve to
Bear
feel it,
Medicine
too.
actually did, when they first created it back in the early or late.
We are not
late
we are not a
19th
historical
18th
podcast.
century.
We're not a historical
19th century.
podcast.
1800s.
Everything that went down with this was so shady and just so disgusting to sit there and listen to it. I mean, she goes on and on and on defending this, even though in the face of the fact that
Specifically asking, I was like, is this ethical?
Right.
Is what you were doing ethical?
Yeah.
And her straight up, like, you can actually see for a moment going like, it's super not. Yes, it is.
She basically looks like I'm gonna say this now. It's very ethical.
Yeah, she had to like take a moment and like compose herself and be like, I'm about to lie real fucking hard because I know this is not ethical to do, but yes, it's entirely ethical to sell these things to children.
That was totally an actor's like.
Yeah, just like and. It's the hand going up to smile and down to frown.
But the problem here is that, you know, she was confronted by Parliament even saying, like, you know, in these areas, like, loot boxes have been banned. And her, like, immediate legal response was, well, you know what, laws are different in different areas. Right, but, okay, so because...
She actually pointed out multiple countries where EA and the Electronics Gaming Board thing, I can't remember the exact name of, has gone to and help manipulate the governments into seeing things their way.
Right.
Yep.
They've spent a lot of money making sure that certain... she specifically pointed out every government that sees things the way they want them to be seen.
Right.
And the way that is obviously, you know, not pro-consumer.
Right.
Or pro-children.
And so, yeah, this whole idea of these surprise mechanics and everything that they're doing in here... again, I want to go back to that heroin discussion. Like, it's this idea of, you know, if it exists, then, like, should you just have ready access to it? And every time they try to confront her on this, she, you know, shuts them down. And if you watch this entire thing play out, and I don't recommend most people do because it probably bore most people.
It
is long and boring.
I found myself getting so enraged by the end of this because you are watching somebody who's just lying to government officials' faces and just getting away with it. It's fine. Like, because they are not educated enough to be able to have the debate and discourse. And I am not insulting them when I say that. They usually have bigger fish to fry.
No, these are government officials.
This is net neutrality all over again.
Yeah.
All of the people making the laws had no idea what the fuck they were regulating.
Yeah, no, these guys, you could tell these the people that were on the board there trying to ask her these questions were required, or they wasn't required. They were asked to by the people that they represent. They're like, hey, loot boxes are bad. Do something about it. So they brought in people who are in control of loot boxes. They're like, hey, what the fuck are these? Why are people mad at us? Because why aren't we controlling them?
Yeah.
And they're like, they're nothing bad. They're the surprise mechanics. That, you know, it's like chocolate for children. It's Hatchimals.
So this is cigarettes for children all over again to me. I mean, look, the thing about heroin is, yes, you should be able to buy it. If you're a consenting adult, you should be able to buy whatever you want to put in your own body. Same is true for gambling, so on and so forth. There's a reason we don't sell cigarettes to children. There's a reason we don't sell alcohol to children. There's a reason we don't let children gamble. We used to. It was bad.
Yeah. And she was specifically asked about the gaming disorder classification that went down recently and said, you know, what do you have to say about this? Because now we have this, it's in the books, this obsessive, you know, gaming disorder. Yeah. And we're talking about, you know, loot boxes or surprise mechanics, if you want to call them that.
Sure.
And, you know, you've got people saying that they're not in a position of knowledge to talk about it, or that they rely on their trade organizations to report back to them whether or not something is unhealthy or addictive or something like that. People that are being paid by their company to, you know, basically say, like, this is not true, don't worry about this, kind of wave that off. They confronted her further and said, you know, you should have responsibility for your own company and your own customers. You know, a trade body is not there to just be a yes man. They might lobby for you, but at the end of the day, you're the one that has the responsibility. These are your users and your company. And basically, she just metaphorically just flipped them the bird.
Yeah. And
it was like, not our problem. We've got dollar bills.
The old Trump style, like, get real.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it was.
Come on, it was. Everyone makes children smoke crack. Don't pretend you're better than
it was
me.
Pure posturing. It was basically the biggest flag that said to government officials, we are not going to regulate this shit ourselves. You're going to have to fucking step
100%. It's big tobacco all over again. That's exactly what we're looking at right now. Is video games over time evolved from being for children to being for everyone, and now there are parts of video games that we really need to keep away from children. And while a lot of maybe the gore and the sexual situations are one thing, this is very much another one. And this is potentially much more harmful than any of that.
Yeah, no, the storytelling aspects of what stories and visual storytelling that in games that children should be allowed to see is so small of a problem
See,
compared to
okay, so
a huger.
hold on. You got a very
deal.
good point.
That is
point.
this.
You got a very good point. When you talk about something like sex or violence in a television show, whether or not a child should be exposed to that, I feel like we could sit down and have a discussion and a debate about.
Right.
But ultimately, if we were all parents, we would all maybe have differing opinions.
Right.
And
we'd all agree they'd eventually need. Eventually, it's up to them.
Right. But we would say, it's up to the parents to what that level of exposure is to that kind of content. My parents loved watching horror movies with their kid, but a lot of parents don't like to do that. But I feel like when you're talking about something like horror or violence or sex, you can have that discussion, you can have that debate, and it's up to you and how you want to raise your child accordingly. When you say, do you want your child to gamble, I don't feel like this is something that we should be discussing.
Yeah, like it's basically everyone goes no.
Right.
Yeah, and that's probably the best example I've had. I've thought of all night. Like, look, if you let's take two modes of harm here. Let's take a 6-year-old child and give them one of two things. They could either watch like Pulp Fiction, or like way too young to be watching Pulp Fiction. But they watch.
6 is too young to watch Pulp Fiction.
They just happened to be on the couch watching Pulp Fiction and no one noticed them, and they were super quiet the whole time. Right. Oh my God, we're sorry. You probably have questions.
They're going to remember it, and they're going to have questions about it.
Would you rather that happen, or would you rather they find a pack of cigarettes and smoke it all?
Right.
You're always going to go with Pulp Fiction.
Everyone would always go with Pulp Fiction. Right. I can answer your questions. And if you're scared...
I can't get rid of your fucking physical addiction you now have.
Yeah. The nicotine, the endorphin that pumps through your body every time you smell cigarette smoke for the rest of your life, that's something I probably shouldn't have exposed you to.
Right. Like, I can't think of a person that you could say, do you want a child to gamble? And they'll be like, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That
my kid needs to be at the blackjack table at 9.
All right, so there's like I get there's like a couple of exceptions to this. Okay, it's just one. The grandma that's like, you get a scratch off because I got a scratch off, and you get to scratch the thing, and then you're like, here's a couple dollars. Like, yeah, I got a couple of dollars. I don't know what the fuck I did.
To a child, that's not about winning money. They don't understand the money. They just really want to scratch the thing.
Scratch the thing. Honestly, you know why I like scratch offs this thing? I just like scratching the thing.
Yeah.
I always buy the dollar ring because you get the most scratching for the amount of money you're spending.
Yeah, I just feel like we are in a very dark timeline right now where we have a major video game company.
We were in the worst time.
Billionaires that work for this company, and them coming out and doing everything they can to keep those dollar bills going as far as they can stretch them right now.
Yeah, and we're specifically going after EA right now. EA is not the only one doing
Since we're not a political podcast, it would be great to sit here and point out the basic failure of larger government to protect itself from stuff like this. The fact that they're not sophisticated enough to even have an intelligent conversation about this yet. And the fact that allowing companies like EA to sneak into other governments around the world and set legislation beforehand so that they can continue to sell in those markets is definitely a failure of human government. It is.
Humanity got fucked up on that.
Right, but we're not a political podcast. We're a podcast about video games as part of another group of things. So, from the perspective of that, the companies that we like that make games for us are doing some shady fucking shit, and I think we should let them know that we see them and that we won't stand for it.
So, one thing is obviously you gotta vote with your wallet on that. Like, tell people like, hey, EA, I'm not going to buy your games. In fact, I can't think of an EA game that I've bought in years because I don't like their practices.
There's a reason I don't keep my subscription to EA Origin Access. And one is because they just don't always have games I don't want to play. Yeah. But two is I want to give them as little of my money as possible. And that's been true for kind of a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that we have to start doing that. And we have to make our friends aren't necessarily aware of these facts aware of them. Cool, you might want to play FIFA, but maybe think about what that actually is encompassing.
And we are definitely not a political podcast, but I feel like we'd be disingenuous to our listeners if we didn't say, if you are anti things like loot boxes and gambling in video games, maybe now is the time to maybe write local government, tell them, express to them this is an issue that maybe should be getting talked about and brought up, that it matters to you so that it can enter the larger political spectrum and isn't just something being fought, in the Senate or something like that. this way, more and more people can become educated about this issue so that they can go into these discussions with the head of EA or whatever other large company that's trying to do this and say, no, I've got the facts. This is gambling. This should not be implemented. There are things that you can proactively do.
Yeah, I feel like this movement in particular, this loot boxes and gambling targeted towards children movement, especially in the United States, needs a big moment that it hasn't had yet. We've gotten articles, but most of them come out of gaming journalism.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we'll get a nod from like CNN or something, but it's never on the front page. We need like a Last Week Tonight or a big editorial in the New York Times, something to be like, hey, here's a giant problem a lot of mainstream America isn't aware of, and it's bigger than we think it is, and here are the companies doing it, and here's the fucking like under the table bullshit they do.
I'm sorry.
Here's all the lobbying that's going on.
I'm sorry.
That.
We're not a political podcast, but we've already done that multiple times with the opioid epidemic, and nothing's fucking come from it. So, like, sorry, it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to make anything better.
That doesn't mean we don't do anything, Tony. You know that.
Yeah.
I get it. I get the point into trying, but at the same point,
like Jon Stewart said on his last episode before he retired from The Daily Show, if you see something, say something. If you smell something, like some bullshit, say something.
Yeah, we absolutely need to do that. And this idea of surprise mechanics, however the fuck you want to label it,
I label that as insidious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we need to start shutting these companies down right now before this escalates and gets any worse. Because if they pass enough legislation in enough countries, then it'll just become a moot point. And these mechanics,
it becomes the norm. And once it becomes the norm.
Yeah, I mean, if they pay enough money, they'll get some people who would like to look the other way to outlaw regulating them.
Exactly.
I mean, we've seen that in other industries.
Absolutely. So that is everything that we have for the show this week. I know that it was a little bit of a dark episode, but it was very important that we talk about this. Are we calling EA out specifically? Yes, we are. Yep. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, look, if
but
Ubisoft,
we're also looking at you, fucking Activision and Blizzard and everybody else.
If Ubisoft had gone up on stage and said surprise mechanics, we'd be yelling at them. But this was EA, and I'm pointing the fucking finger.
Yeah, absolutely. So you call it whatever you want, but it's still something that hurts your player base in ways that you refuse to be aware of at this point. And honestly, we've been talking about loot boxes or surprise mechanics for the better part of a year. We need to get some really good legislation in place simply for the fact that I want to stop talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's so important to what's going on in gaming right now.
I was going to say, I think it's been longer than that. I think it's been like a solid 2 years we've been bitching about loot boxes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of done at this point. Like, with most things in life, it's once it passes like 2 years of me arguing about it, and nothing has happened, I get done with it, and I was like, well, I'm just not going to fucking deal with it anymore.
Yes.
And I don't want it to get to that point. I don't want society to get to that point.
Right. We need to be angry. We need to be writing, to people
right to your fucking local, right, just fucking, there's like, if you, or most of our listeners in the United States.
Yeah.
If you have, like, senators and shit, you've got representatives, all their numbers are publicly available, and if I have to fucking go find them for you and put them in a fucking list.
There's a whole lot of presidential debates going up right now. Why don't you go hit up one of those and ask them what their opinions on loot boxes are? Maybe
that would be a great debate question.
I would like to see the 35,000 people who are running for president on the Democratic Party all fucking tell me what their opinion on loot boxes are.
Yeah, okay, so tell me your opinion of loot boxes in video games as in reference to gambling and children.
Yeah.
And just watch them all go.
That sounds fantastic, and it should be absolutely done.
That needs to come in through Twitter, too. Like, that would be great.
So, that is everything we have for the show this week. Thank you for sticking with us. Again, it was a dark episode, but it needed to be talked about. Absolutely, 110%. If you have any opinions about any of the things that we have been talking about, Tony, where can they find us?
Facebook.com/TheSillyNerd. Like, share with your friends. Twitter's @TheSillyNerd. Info@TheSillyNerd.com is our email address. SillyNerd.com is our website. Donate button on there if you want to donate the show. Donate button on twitch.tv/SillyNerd. Live 7:30 Central every Monday. And whenever I find the thing, I'll do more live streaming. Until next week.
So,
you got stuff? You had stuff. Okay, I didn't know you had stuff.
You did your thing.
I just rambled it all real quick.
Right before we sign off, I had this thought and I have to say it.
Okay.
I really want to watch Joe Biden's face while he tries to figure out what his opinion on loot boxes is.
Oh, it's going to be good.
All right, so.
There would definitely be some surprise mechanics in store.
That would be a surprise mechanic of a fucking debate right there.
All right, until next week, adventures. For Tony, this is James.
For James, this is Tony.
And I'm Hector.
All right, everyone. Good night.
And good game. Okay, you can't say that about me playing Destiny 2 anymore because Bungie bought themselves out of any of the deals with Activision and Sony. They are done with all of that.
Yeah, no more Activision.
Yeah, no
from
more
the laser
Activision
launcher.
at all. Right now, like I still don't want to give them any money because this most recent season was still under the banner of the Activision deal.
Just don't buy any boxes. For
I also
a while.
don't buy boxes.
You don't buy
anyway.
boxes anyway. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
buy boxes
You
anyway.
probably earn them all or whatever
I
you
earn,
need to do.
so the problem with it is,
But there are
with-
still loot boxes in it.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, there are.
there are, and
It was super predatory when the game launched.
when they
too.
first came out, that was Activision.
Yeah.
And they've already shown us what the future for Destiny 2's loot box system is for their Eververse store, and it's very different. No.
Support SNK always.
Yeah,
Definitely.
SNK. Support CDPR. Support. I mean, Nintendo does
Go
a
play
pretty
some
good job.
Samurai Showdown.
Even though unionization, I'm not sure if that's much of a thing in Japan.
No, Japan absolutely needs it.
Yeah, they
If
probably need
anybody
it more
did.
than we do.
Yeah,
honestly.
it is culturally not a thing.
Are you
so-
done licking yourself? There's been a cat
Well-
lick. Like, my crotch is so fucking warm right now. This thing's a fucking space heater.
He really
Space
is.
heater, just sitting there taking a bath on your crotch.
Oh my god, dude! I'm a billion degrees right now. I was freezing earlier, and now I'm like starting to sweat because he's fucking.
Samurai
sitting on
Showdown
me.
had the best pre-order bonuses. I can't imagine what they would be.
I heard the next Samurai Showdown game looks really good.
Buy the game and the season pass is free. That sounds
Beautiful.
like a good deal.
That sounds like you're just buying the game
It
at
sounds like
that
you're just
point,
buying
and
the-
more stuff will come out later.
Yeah, that's the you bought the game. We'll add more to it later.
What was the game?
Okay.
What was the
Cool.
fighting game that had like $11,000 worth of DLC you could buy? Which
Oh,
one was that?
Brooklyn would know that.
Yeah,
It was
Brooklyn would know.
Whatever it was. It was probably something ridiculous.
It wasn't Mortal Kombat. It was like
No, it was
Mortal Kombat's
it was not
usually
Mortal
pretty
Kombat.
good. It was
Mortal
an
Kombat's generally really good. about
DOA.
that.
DOA. Yeah.
Yeah.
There
Dead
you
or
go.
Alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes.
And
that
it wasn't
checks
even
out.
like a glitch. It was just like this is like,
Like if you do the math, this is what you're going to spend to get
Yeah.
all of this.
That's so dumb.
Yeah, no, fuck that.
Well, thank you guys so much. We had a blast.
right,
Brooklyn
I'm
is
signing
LA.
us
Thank
out.
you.
yeah. You guys have a good night.
Thanks for sticking around.